Man and machine are working harder across Europe than they have in a decade. Economic growth in the 19 countries of the Eurozone rose to 2.5% last year.
We're seeing good growth out of the US, we're seeing good growth out of China and out of emerging Asia and out of South America, and the Eurozone is coming along for the ride. There's a lot of optimism there. Prices are rising, capacity utilization is stretched, as some of these PMIs have said. So this is ticking all the boxes for people who said that 2017-2018 was going to be a period of a European boom.
Analysts say a number of factors are propelling the economy. Demand for European goods and services is rising from the United States, China, India, and elsewhere. Historically low interest rates have helped businesses grow without breaking the bank, and the European Central Bank has been pumping billions of dollars into the economy, boosting government spending on infrastructure and other large-scale projects. Greece, Ireland, Portugal, and Cyprus were all bailed out after the global financial crisis of 2008. Now, all these economies are contributing to the Eurozone's recovery. And that's persuaded officials they can move on with stalled reforms.
The time of window that we have now, both politically and economic, should be used to complete the landscape of institutions that we have in the euro area.
But while the wheels of commerce are churning on the continent, the United Kingdom appears to have Brexited the growth spurt even before it leaves the economic bloc. Its economy grew less than 2% in 2017.
It's an interesting one in as much as we have this synchronised global economic recovery. The UK has been able to take part in that in a small way, but certainly not in the sort of way you would have expected were Brexit not overhanging the whole economic outlook.
While the International Monetary Fund expects the Eurozone to grow even faster in 2018, business sentiment in the UK is expected to remain weak, and that's raising fresh questions over Britain's move out of the European Union. Mobin Nasir, TRT World.
Let's get more on this now with Claus Vistesen, who joins me from London. He's Chief Eurozone Economist at the economic research consultancy Pantheon Macroeconomics. Great to have you on the show, Claus. Look, very encouraging top-line growth for the Eurozone, but as the ECB starts to pull some of that massive stimulus out of the region, is this growth going to be sustainable? Are we starting to see inflationary pressures creep in here?
Well, I mean, let me start with the bottom part of your question in terms of inflation. I mean, the answer to that question is no. We have not seen any inflation come through to any reasonable extent. But obviously, the central bank, at least to some extent, looks forward, and therefore they're already probably going to remove or end QE this year. And so that's going to add a little bit of a different complexion to the recovery in the Eurozone. But it's going to take longer for the Eurozone economy to start feeling a withdrawal of stimulus. The ECB has to move a little bit before we see that. So, you know, my expectation is this year will be another good year for the Eurozone economy. Maybe not as strong as 2017. 2017 was really, really strong. I mean, that was like a home run. So maybe this year is going to be sort of a little bit more moderate. But, you know, as your colleague said in his introduction here, you know, the Eurozone economy is, for all intents and purposes, you know, firing on all cylinders.
Right, but in the meantime, the euro has been on a tear. Could that start to impact exports from the region, and could that dent growth going forwards?
Yeah, it could. In the first half of this year, definitely manufacturing data have been very, very strong. The PMIs have been straight up and hit new record highs. And you know, as the euro strengthens further, which it probably will, or you know, just take the fact that it's up about 10% year over year. Yeah, I think that's going to dent the manufacturing data in the first half of the year. And so maybe we're going to tell a little bit of a different story in the Eurozone, one in which, you know, the data doesn't just goes straight up, but still the underlying trend in the Eurozone is one of a strong economic expansion. And historically, these kind of expansions, they don't die of old age. They need something external or a sharp tightening in financial conditions to get, you know, knocked off their perch. And right now, in the short run, I think you have to be very pessimistic to see that happening.
Right. Let's talk about politics for a second. What I find quite interesting is that economically, yes, almost all of Europe seems to be pulling in the same direction. But when you look at it politically, the picture looks very different. You've got a pro-Europe core and a pretty Eurosceptic periphery. Could this dislocation undo some of that growth story?
Oh, definitely. I mean, but again, the political risk in the Eurozone has been the dog that didn't bark, and we've been talking about it for such a long time now. So the economy, I think we can say for sure now, the economy has been resilient to that. Also because what happens with these kind of very anti-EU, anti-Euro movements is that once they step forward to the ledge and look down, they either step back and kind of renege a little bit on their plans, or people simply don't want it. Because the alternatives that are being presented to people are not very good. I mean, it's one thing to say you want to leave the EU, you want to leave the Eurozone, you want to break everything, but if there's nothing alternative that comes after that in terms of exactly what it is that you propose to people, then, you know, that political case becomes difficult to make. But, you know, we're going to have a round of it with the Italian elections. There's certainly going to be chaos there, I think, at least in the short run, in terms of the political message, because there are very anti-EU and anti-Euro skeptic parties there that will do well. I mean, you know, we can be pretty sure that the Five-Star Movement, for example, will do well in the Italian elections.
Right. Now, look, if for some reason this synchronized global recovery that we've all been talking about turns into a synchronized global downturn, how equipped is the ECB and the European economies to deal with such an event?
Better than they have been for a long time, I would say, in the sense that the ECB now has the mandate to use all the classic crisis-fighting tools of a central bank. If you remember, you go back 2-3 years, you know, people were doubting that they could do QE. They're not doubting that anymore. So they have all the instruments. Also, the banking union is more tightly knit together now. There's more fiscal room in the individual governments, and crucially, the Eurozone as a whole and all the weaker economies also run external surpluses now. So the Eurozone is much better equipped today to handle a global shock. But the Eurozone is still in some sense, a beta to the global economy, which means that if the global economy slows, the Eurozone will also slow quite rapidly. So that hasn't changed. But in terms of fighting off a sort of a financial crisis type event, I think the Eurozone is much better equipped than it was 5 years ago.
OK, we are going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. Claus Vistesen of Pantheon Economics, Macroeconomics even. Thank you.